She has to primarily project herself as African American because that's the main voter bloc.
Does she qualify as person of Indian origin?
If she were to ask for an OCI card, I think she would be eligible.
Did Sheikh Hasina miscalculate the anger?
This is not the first time that you've had student protests. The government did not gauge the sense of dissatisfaction that made it a much larger movement.
Do you think is it just the tip of the iceberg?
Bangladesh, I think today has about 17-18% inflation, and that has contributed to slowing down of the economy, added to unemployment, added to high cost of living, desire for better governance. There are underlying factors that have contributed to this.
Why is it that Nepal is unable to have a stable government?
In a matter of 16 years, you've had 14 governments in power. So you can attribute it to the constitution.
Mr. Oli, on taking oath of office, he said that whatever the border issues are, it will be resolved through clear and firm manner.
That part of Nepal that they claim, but which is our territory, in Kalapani.
And they've also put it in their currency note.
Currency note and the map, etc. I mean, unfortunately, you talk about dialogue, but you have nothing to substantiate your claim. You have no record to say that this area has been your area.
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching or listening to another edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. My guest today is Harshvardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary of India. He's been High Commissioner to Bangladesh and also Ambassador to Thailand and to the United States. We will be discussing the situation in Bangladesh and Nepal. Welcome, Ambassador Shringla. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. For viewers and listeners, Ambassador Shringla is no stranger to the podcast. He's appeared on episode 29. I request you to watch that for a larger picture about India's foreign policy. Today, I'll ask you, sir, about Nepal and Bangladesh. But before I do that, I want to talk about the developments which have happened in the US, because you've been ambassador out there. So how do you see this, the month of July, ever since, the assassination attempt on President Trump, subsequently the upheaval that has happened in the Democratic Party, and now you have a person like Kamala Harris, who's going to be the contender. There's controversy over her being either Indian American or a Black American woman president, probable. So just tell me about how you see this.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show again, Smitaji. It's great to be here. Well, the US, as you say, in the month of July has been a very, very interesting place because political activity has reached fever pitch, starting with the debate between President Biden and former President Trump that didn't go so well for President Biden, and it led to a lot of requests or demand from within his party for him to withdraw from the race. And I guess as one of our people had put it, it's actually Chidananda Rajghatta, who was the Times of India correspondent, said it was Trump who was shot, but it was Biden who fell. So Trump's the attempted assassination on Trump had a sort of electrifying effect on his constituency, his voters, his supporters. And actually reached out to more than them, to a significant part of the country. His popularity ratings went up, and there was a sense that he showed the spirit for which America is famous, that you can be down, but it's how you get up that matters. And if you recall, when Trump was shot, he was shot in the ear. He came up and pumped his fists in the air and he said, "Fight." And I think that went down very well with the majority of the American electorate that saw him as a person who, despite having a near-death experience, could come up and actually, show his resilience and willingness.
Defied the age factor also, right, which was against him for some time.
Exactly. The age factor was there, but it also heightened the contrast between President Biden.
Yeah.
Some of his remarks which were slurred, some miscues, and at the same time mistaking individuals. I think all of that contrasted with Trump's ability to show that spirit of resilience, and it showed him up. It highlighted him in that context, and I think that put greater pressure on the Biden campaign. And ultimately, President Biden was recovering from COVID-19 attack, decided to withdraw from the race. But in doing so, he endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris, for the Democratic candidacy. Now, for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Convention is the place where the decision is finally taken as to who should be the candidate. But President Biden's endorsement is very big. And I think given the fact that you have limited time available to candidates, given the fact that she is already vice president, and so she is nationally exposed in that sense that she's been on television, she's known to people, she's a known face, and she represents continuity of President Biden's policies. So,
but is 3 months enough?
No, certainly not. In the United States, you plan this years in advance.
Exactly.
And a candidate typically, like Trump would have about a year to really campaign, to visit, different parts of the country, to essentially convince voters that you're the right person for the job. And from that point of view, Vice President Harris has had the advantage of being in the establishment.
She was on the ticket anyway.
Exactly. Absolutely. But the difference really is that she's now in the forefront.
Yeah.
People want to know what she is going to be as a candidate.
How do you explain this suddenly, the millions of dollars coming into her campaign fund? Was it already in the pipeline, or was this sudden donation spiel coming in? Is that reinforcing the fact that people who were anyway donating to the party were waiting for a better candidate?
Yes, I mean, from various reports, it would appear that many donors, big donors, influential donors, were holding back because they probably expected a change or wanted to see another candidate. And as a result of which, I think the moment a younger, more viable candidacy was announced, they basically opened their wallets, and you had a fairly big, inflow of about $250 million into the Democratic campaign coffers. And from that perspective, I think it's significant because the more money you can raise, the better your chances in the American electoral system.
Yeah.
And Trump hasn't done too badly as well because...
But do you think he's nervous? Trump hasn't done badly, of course.
I'm talking
flying
about
high.
Funding. Yeah.
And there was this controversy whether Elon Musk actually had given in the funds or was going to give it, and then he's turned around and said that was a wrong report, erroneous report by WSJ about whether he's going to be giving that kind of funding. But do you think that for Trump, which would have been an easy cakewalk almost, with Biden on as the presidential candidate, but with Kamala Harris, is he a little nervous maybe?
Well, let me answer the one about Elon Musk first, because apparently Musk was attributed to have said that he would contribute $45 million a month until the elections to Trump's campaign, which he sort of slightly backpedaled on, saying that I didn't really commit that sort of money.
Yeah.
But he's one of the big donors. And of course, there would be enough donors on the Republican side who would come in. This is the initial flush of, I would say, interest from Kamala Harris's entry into the political fold. Now, to the question whether Trump would be nervous on Kamala Harris's entry, I would think that he would have anticipated, an alternative candidate. The candidates could also be other options. There were people like Gavin Newsom, governor of California.
Yeah.
You have Gretchen Whitmer, who's the governor of Michigan. You have other, there was also talk of Michelle Obama at one time. So the Democrats had a repertoire of people who could come in and who could basically have given Trump quite a fight.
Do you think any of these would, the names that you've mentioned, would they be Kamala Harris's pick for vice president? Because till the time of filing this report, she hasn't made a pick as yet.
And not some of the ones I mentioned, because she can't have a running mate from California. Because she's from the state of California herself. She cannot have another woman candidate. So it should be a white male, preferably from the Midwest. She would have to look and possibly one of the governors of the Democrat-ruled states in the Midwest, possibly. But this is something that she will have to announce by the 19th of August when they have the Democratic convention.
So do you think it'll be like a surprise element, bring out something from your hat, a bunny from the hat,
well,
that day?
that always works best.
Best, correct.
But one doesn't know what process they would follow.
Okay.
But by the 19th, she has to announce it.
Okay.
And of course, her candidacy also is not officially endorsed by the Democratic
Right.
Party because there's a due process that has to be followed.
Yeah. But she
And,
secured the numbers
yes,
so far.
apparently some 2,000 delegates
Yeah.
have come out in her favor, and they're big names, like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary and Bill
Obama is
Clinton.
still holding back, President Obama.
Yeah, but his camp has made favorable noises. So I think he will definitely endorse
He
at the
will.
right time.
Okay.
But the issue really is that you have to go through the process in any case.
Okay. So this question which I wanted to ask you was about the Indian community. You've interacted with them as ambassador. So are the Indians confused? Should they back Kamala Harris? I believe the aunties of Indian community have already come out in support, but the uncles are still holding back, I've heard. They've not yet come out. Do they see Kamala Harris as Indian American? Do they see her as Black American? Because, there are many Indian commentators who have said that, look, she's not. Some say, no, she is. When she was on the vice president ticket, it was like Chitti from Tamil Nadu. But when it comes to, she never showed any kind of affinity, should I say, for the Indian American community out there, like going for the Diwali dues or any of the others. So how do you see this?
Well, for most politicians, you should be many things to many people.
Correct.
You can't, stereotype yourself. In the case of Kamala Harris, she has to primarily project herself as African American because that's the main voter bloc in America. But obviously, she has a strong attachment to the Indian side from her mother. And there are, strong support groups for her, especially in California. Those who know her in California and Silicon Valley and some of our friends from in diaspora and others are already raising funds and excited at the prospect of having one of their own.
Does she qualify as person of Indian origin?
Well, if she were to ask for an OCI card, I think she would be eligible because her mother is
Her
of Indian.
mother was, okay. So one parent needs to be.
One parent, yes.
She, even if she doesn't apply for an OCI card, Indians would look at her as person of Indian origin. You can
yes.
look at her.
Apparently in her, part of Tamil Nadu, there's already posters and a fair amount of excitement there.
Yeah.
So, she certainly would appeal to many Indian American voters. But on the other hand, on the Republican camp, you have Usha Chilukuri Vance, who is also, a really impressive figure because she and J.D. Vance. Now, look, J.D. Vance is a very important figure in the Republican side. And I think we should not underestimate him. He comes from the Midwest. He's from a fairly deprived family background from rural America. The part of America that says that, we haven't got the gains that, our country, we haven't seen the gains that our country is making and are disappointed with the way the country is going. So he's responding to those interests, which is very important in America today.
He's pro-life with no conditionalities, not even for rape or incest. He doesn't.
So he has certain views which are slightly different, and I think that would help him further. He is young. He's struggled, made his way up. He was in the army, and he went to Yale. That's where he met Usha.
So multicultural family,
absolutely,
son of the soil, all that come up the hard way.
Yeah, and
that works too.
Done well in business as well. And obviously, both he and his wife are brilliant. If you go through their CVs, you'll see that they've really done very, very well despite the odds. And
she's a lawyer, and
she's a lawyer. Yes. She was doing law from Yale. That's where they met. And subsequently, she'd also done internships with some very prominent Supreme Court justices, more than one.
So Indian community divided on loyalties, first on the party basis and then on which way is and who's more Indian.
Let's put it this way: the Indian community can claim either side.
Either side. Chalo, good. Dono haathon mein laddu.
Absolutely.
So let's just conclude the America bit of our conversation. So I wanted to ask you, Ambassador, about what at the end of President Biden's 4.5 years, he did give a very emotional speech, and it was quite interesting what he said about personal ambition, but what is necessary for the country, and his attachment to the White House, but realizes that a younger person needs to take over, and him handing over the baton to a younger person. What would you say? How will people view President Biden's legacy now? What is his legacy vis-a-vis international relations, domestic policy, and India also?
Well, one has to remember that President Biden has been in American politics for over 50 years.
Yeah.
That's longer than most Americans have lived. And so from that perspective, he's made a mark, as a senator very early on, as the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which is a very powerful post. But as president, I think he certainly has pushed through legislation that has been important. The Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, encourages, green industries to come up. It also, there is also a lot of incentives given to industry to set up shop in the United States, especially semiconductors and other areas. Something that the European partners had been a little uncomfortable about, because it really squeezes the entire space out, and every investor possible is attracted to the US because of the sort of incentives that were given. He's stressed a lot on infrastructure, so there's a lot of money that has been allocated to infrastructure development in the United States. He has, worked on issues, like education, healthcare, etc., where Vice President Kamala Harris has also been involved.
Affordable healthcare is what he's talked about.
That's right.
But again, the messy exit from Afghanistan.
Yeah, but there are also, I would say, areas that, people have questioned. One of them is, as you say, Afghanistan, the withdrawal from Afghanistan could have been handled differently. I think here both he and Trump were in agreement, separately, of course, that a withdrawal was necessary. But how do you conduct that withdrawal? I think this was a blot in his presidency. And
it wasn't a withdrawal, it was like cauterizing, just getting out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you lost lives in the process.
Yes.
You left people in the lurch. And it gave a message to the rest of the world about, the waning American military power. It reflected that. I'm not saying it's correct.
Will he have to bear the brunt of that? Will people remember that? For example, if we were to look at the Vietnam War and the brunt of that, that the American president has to bear, do you think Afghanistan matters at all in the American way of things? Or do people think that, never mind, it's over, done with? No,
I think most people will think that it's over and done with. Afghanistan's importance was only in terms of its being, a sort of center for terrorism. But once those issues were in some ways sort of taken care of, and who felt that this might not continue, public interest sort of moved on. But the fact of that withdrawal certainly was seen across the world. And the messages it sent both in America and elsewhere wasn't very positive. Besides that, I think the other area where the Trump campaign has got a stronger position is on immigration. Immigration is very important to Americans because of the very large number of people coming through illegal migration, especially through the land border from Texas and other states bordering Mexico. And here, I think, Americans across the board, whether they are Hispanics, African Americans, feel that you need a stronger position on immigration.
As compared to what Biden has done. So it's back to the wall?
Well, stronger steps could be in various ways. Trump, for example, had put restrictions even on people coming from certain countries where there was a lot of illegal migration, people who could be involved in spreading radicalism, fundamentalism, etc. The point is that the important thing is to be perceived as being tougher on immigration. So I think one of the problems that is seen today in America is that illegal immigration is on the rise, whereas for legal migration, the procedures are lengthy and cumbersome, and there are very few people who can come in through that route. So and there is certainly a gap. The unemployment rate is very low. There is a huge demand for certain levels of workers, skilled workers, semi-skilled workers, professionals, etc. And that gap has to be filled in through the legal migration route.
Okay.
And you've got to plug the illegal immigration, and that's where I think there's strong support across the board in America. So that's another area where I think the Biden-Harris presidency has been on the receiving end of criticism. So whether it's aspects of foreign policy, whether it's aspects of domestic policy, there would be areas where Trump would challenge them. Okay. At the same time, I would
on
say...
On Russia and Israel, how will Biden's legacy be seen on these two?
Well, on Russia, of course, I think there was support for a firm stance against Russia for its, having infringed Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and brought about war within Europe itself. So I think there was support for what he was doing. Although
that will get reversed if Trump comes in.
So point is that, after 2 years of that war, whether the American public is still willing to spend that level of money and still support an ongoing conflict which doesn't seem to see any end, I think people would be interested in finding some sort of an outcome all round. And so Zelensky himself is talking about...
worried.
About opening up, dialogue and negotiations.
Correct.
Which was a no-no earlier.
And Israel, how do you see that with Netanyahu's visit also? Nobody wanting to be seen in a photo op with him other than Musk, I think, by now. Nancy Pelosi has already gone on record and criticized his speech. So, awkward situation with Israel. How will it change if Trump was to be president? And will it be more of the same if Kamala Harris comes in?
Well, Biden had a difficult position because he had to support Israel, which is a long-time ally of the United States, which was also under, terrorist attack.
In fact, the concession speech that Biden did, the only other country that he's mentioned other than America is Israel. Rather the conflict in Gaza.
Right.
That's the only country that he mentions in his speech. So, yes, go ahead.
So, it's a hard act because on the one hand, you have to be seen as supporting a country that's fighting against the wall against terrorism. On the other hand, there's a strong sentiment that, Israel has inflicted a lot of, has committed human rights violations, and the loss of civilian lives is in many senses indefensible. I'm just talking about the sentiment. I'm not sharing what I'm saying, but I'm talking about the sentiment. And from that perspective, he's caught between a rock and a hard place, as they say. Because on the one hand, you've got the traditional support for Israel. On the other hand, you've got and mind you, Biden has been supportive in his entire political career. On the other hand, you have a strong sentiment, especially from the left of center. And I think a lot of the Democratic Party will identify with that, especially the progressives, which is the liberal side of the Democratic Party, with that sentiment, which is really today, going against Israel for its policies in Gaza. So he's in a difficult position. Trump will find it easier because he can go there and, if he comes in, see how he could mediate his way out of this. But Biden himself is hoping that before his term ends, he should be able to see some sort of a ceasefire.
Or at least the hostages back.
Hostages back and temporary ceasefire, etc. Some sort of a understanding that would allow for forward movement in this particular
to some extent, it's like Carter and the Iran situation. At least get the hostages back before you hand over to the next president. I would not, there, of course, they were American citizens. Here, they are Israeli citizens. But yeah,
I think there's some Americans as well. Yeah.
And Americans as well, So I would think that you want to clear your table before you leave, that kind of a situation. So it's one of those unfinished tasks for Biden, right?
He would like to see that as part of his legacy, to see some sort of temporary settlement in that Gaza situation.
Gaza situation, right. Now let's go over to Bangladesh to speak about the situation there. But before that, for our viewers and listeners, a short primer on the situation in Bangladesh. Bangladesh was on the edge in July 2024 after a mass unrest rocked the country over the quota system. It all started with a court decision in June this year reinstating 30% employment quotas in state jobs for families of freedom fighters who took part in the 1971 war with Pakistan. What began as a student protest got complicated when political parties got involved and it became an uprising against the economic downturn witnessed in the past year. Over 200 people were killed and thousands were injured in the protests and government crackdown. In the wake of the unrest, Bangladesh's top court scrapped the controversial job quota. Bangladesh's Prime Minister claimed it was like a terrorist attack to topple the government. The Western media has been critical of the Prime Minister's strident manner of crushing the revolt. Ambassador Shringla, tell me about the situation in Bangladesh now. Did Sheikh Hasina miscalculate the anger that has spilt on the streets of Bangladesh's cities? Not just Dhaka this time, not just one university, but private universities and other cities too. Did she miscalculate the level of anger against the quota system?
To put it in perspective, this is not the first time that you've had student protests. I mean, even when I was High Commissioner in 2018, you had some fairly serious student protests. One protest was about road accidents, which was, I think students were justified because there were a lot of traffic violations that resulted in the deaths of people, including students. The other was on the quota issue.
It traces back right up till the creation of Bangladesh with the Bhasha Andolan, which was also a student protest.
Well, it's the genesis of this is 1971 when they had to fight genocide and the Pakistani forces there. A lot of people died and a lot of people were part of that freedom movement. And much like our own freedom fighters, Bangladesh also gave certain special privileges to their freedom fighters. One of this was, sort of quota for jobs to to them and their descendants. But 53 years down the line, students are saying that, it's been a fairly long time and you need to now rationalize this at a time of, high unemployment, economic difficulties. There has to be a more level playing field. So in 2018, you saw agitations which was for the removal of the quota system. The government saw the writing on the wall and agreed to actually do away with the entire quota system, which they started implementing. Earlier this year, some sections went to court and the High Court actually cancelled the government's decision to do away with the quota system. So that, I think, enraged the students and they went back into the protest mode. Government, on the other hand, says that, look, our views are not incompatible with ours. I mean, we are with you on this issue. That's why we abolished the quota system. And we have taken the matter, we have appealed the High Court decision in the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court has to pronounce judgment on that. But you're right in saying that perhaps government did not gauge the sense of, I would say, in some senses, dissatisfaction at various levels that made it a much larger movement than it is. The students set out on their issues, but then it became a larger issue of governance and so on and so forth. But what actually, I think, made it a sort of a violent and more, a movement that actually cost a lot of lives and arson, etc., was the fact that other actors came into the game. And from what we can now see, this is a very planned move to infiltrate the student movement, to bring in cadres, by the opposition BNP, Bangladesh National Party, and the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is, like the Muslim Brotherhood. It is a radical Islamic grouping that is pro-Pakistan. So they were the ones who supported Pakistan in 1971, and their descendants today continue with that same policy. And their student wing, the Chhatra Shibir, also infiltrated the student movement. And the students, when they negotiated with government, were at pains to say that our protest is purely non-violent. We don't identify with any of those elements that are indulging in violence and arson. Those are not genuine student protesters. So there is a distinction between the two. But once this movement is happening and people from behind are indulging in violence and burning down. If you see today, the damage has been extensive. They've burned down 2 metro stations completely. They burnt a 4-story building of the Bangladesh Transport Corporation. They've burned down, post offices, police stations. They've also gone in a place called Narshingdi, freed, inmates. Some 860 inmates have been freed, including some who were wanted for Islamic terrorism. So some people involved with heinous crimes.
So there was ulterior motive, not just public anger.
Absolutely.
When
so looting also meant looting the armory, so weapons, etc. And so it took a dangerous turn with these anti-national elements coming into the picture. And I think, if you see the social media space, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and that continues to happen even today.
Even though internet was stopped for some time.
Exactly. But a lot of it is coming from abroad. Because Jamaat-e-Islami has a lot of its supporters who are outside. And a lot of these so-called, political exiles, basically opportunists sitting in different part of the world, posting and blogging, are all essentially linked to the same, larger
ecosystem,
brotherhood, so to speak. And they are basically sophisticated Jamaatis, you can say. I mean, they're able to project a sophisticated image, lobby with governments in Western countries, project a certain case of human rights and, violations, etc. But at the end of the day, they are hardcore radical Islamists.
So what got everybody thinking was that when Sheikh Hasina called them Razakars, it's an epithet in Bangladesh. You can tell me more about that. When she said that they are Razakars out there, it should have got the students upset or whatever, but that wasn't that. They willingly took on the title of Razakars and said, yes, we are Razakars. That itself should have put up red flags, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, her response was taken out of context. I think the question was that, who are the people who, why are we giving quotas to these people, etc., to freedom fighters, etc. And she said, then whom should we give it to? If we don't give it to freedom fighters, should we give it to Razakars? That means those who opposed the freedom struggle in 71.
Yeah.
That was her point. But it was...
those who collaborated with the Pakistani
exactly,
army.
taken out of context to associate it with the students who were protesting. And I think that was not the intention. But whatever it is, I think it sort of... basically the students said that, took that,
It inflamed passions.
It certainly inflamed passions. And I think it also, in some senses, provided fuel to the fire.
But also the BNP and some elements, at least the radical elements in the BNP and the Jamaat, would try to now influence people and say, yes, embrace the concept of Razakars, because they believe in that, in the Razakar theory, right? So they would say that make it acceptable to be a Razakar. Would they do that?
No, I think the sentiment in the country would be strongly against Razakars.
Against, right.
And the BNP takes great pains to show that they're also a nationalist party. They're opposed to Razakars, and that their founding father, which is Ziaur Rahman, who was a general at that time, and ran the country as a dictator for quite some time, also was a nationalist. I mean, he was the first, they claimed, to call for independence, etc., liberation from the Pakistani forces, and fought the Pakistani forces. So they also want to take on the nationalist mantle. They don't want to take on the Razakar mantle. Okay. That's only reserved for the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is definitely, the organization that was a political movement even at that time, which is pro-Pakistan. And then, of course, they have a score to settle with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, because she understood the sentiment of the people of Bangladesh that, after so many decades of, the freedom struggle, you had people who were involved in huge human rights crimes and violations, who were personally involved, were still moving around.
Yes.
And so she had the War Crimes Tribunal set up when she came to office in 2008, and ultimately resulted in the execution of some of the most wanted, some of the people who had the worst records at that time.
But there are still some of
And
them.
who are very influential figures, who were leading the Jamaat-e-Islami, influential figures in the BNP, were executed, following that trial.
She continues to keep that entire blood-filled past in public memory. Unlike in India, which slowly the whole partition trauma was somehow got erased after a couple of decades, 2 decades or whatever. People who witnessed that partition didn't talk about it much, didn't talk about the atrocities. It just went away. But I've seen with Sheikh Hasina, she keeps that 1971, that trauma of what happened and how the country was created, and the sacrifices made by the freedom fighters still alive amongst the population. For her, it's a mission to bring justice to those who were to those who suffered at the hands of who she calls the perpetrators of the 71 atrocities, and also the trauma that the country witnessed.
We have to remember that she is part of that trauma.
Yes.
She lost her entire family except for a sister. 15th August 1975. Just in one go, her entire family was wiped out.
Yeah.
And I think, and of course, there's been attempt, to assassinate her, which she almost was killed at that grenade attack that was undertaken more recently during BNP government period. So there is a personal angle to this, but also I think the country is, divided. There are still those who believe in that. Pre-71 era, there are still people who are holdouts from that time. There are still communities that, like the Jamaat-e-Islami, that feel that Bangladesh should be, a sort of
Islamic Republic,
Islamic caliphate.
Caliphate.
Yeah,
Okay.
which basically should have closer ties to Pakistan and so on and so forth. So that struggle continues in some senses. That's an ideological struggle between a secular, multicultural, multi-religious Bangladesh as opposed to those who are very, very focused on monotheism and religious control, theocratic control of the country.
But to come back to the stir, the quota stir, do you think it is just that, or is it just the tip of the iceberg? There is economic and political discontent in Bangladesh. The economy suddenly is sliding. People are without jobs, unemployment. Is this just one of the things which is bothering? I mean, which showed up the street protests. There are other things too.
Well, so to put it in context, from 2010 onwards, Bangladesh has seen unprecedented growth and development. And I suppose political stability under Sheikh Hasina had a lot to do with that. And in this period, you've had, the GDP almost doubling. You've had trade increasing hugely. You had human security indices, which have been very, very good, including, gender participation, healthcare, education, bringing down the fertility rate in the population and so on and so forth. I think all that has recorded unprecedented.
Even the Pakistanis were saying, look at this country.
Absolutely.
Which was born from us, and see where they have reached.
No, absolutely. Without a doubt, I think they've gone from being a LDC country to now coming as a middle-level country, a middle-income country. So from that perspective, they've done very well. But COVID-19 was a huge setback. I think COVID-19 followed immediately by the Ukraine conflict has been very hard on the Bangladesh economy.
Because exports dipped? What was the reason?
Well, first and foremost, Bangladesh as a country imports a lot of its food and energy sources. I mean, we import energy, but we don't import that much food. And we could offset the energy by buying discounted Russian oil. I think that policy served us well. So our inflation levels remain stable, whereas countries all around us suffered incredibly from huge costs of galloping inflation. And so Bangladesh, I think today has about 17-18% inflation. And that is because, again, of high costs of imports. But secondly, of course, remittances, fell. Demand for their, main product, export product, which is garments, also fell because in the West, because of the Ukraine
Stagnation,
conflict,
yes.
there was some,
Huh.
level of stagnation, especially when it comes to buying goods like garments and, clothing, etc. So I think, that brunt was felt all around. Foreign exchange reserves came down significantly. And that has contributed to slowing down of the economy, added to unemployment, added to high cost of living, um, coupled with a sense of, a desire for better governance. I think a lot of these factors there are underlying factors that have contributed to this.
Let's go to the China angle. Sheikh Hasina went to Beijing and then cut short her visit and came back. And one view was that she wasn't accorded the same level of respect and, they didn't receive her properly. The other was that she didn't get financial assistance. And then you see the stir which is happening. So is there a China angle to the student stir? Are they fueling it in any manner?
Well, I mean, from various reports that you see from the media, her visit to China was not what would have been, what it was touted to be. Very major visit that would result in huge deals and also a very, very strong financial backing and support from China. And most of all, I think, a perceived sense of, I would say, treatment at the highest levels, because, I think Xi Jinping had a very short meeting with her and left it primarily to his prime minister to deal with her. And perhaps a sense that she was not accorded the sort of reception that she should have. And here I think, contrast it with India, where I recall in 2017 when Sheikh Hasina made a visit to India and I was at the airport in Delhi, Prime Minister Modi came down himself to the airport. I was surprised myself. And he had said that we just keep it a secret. And, it was a complete surprise for Bangladesh when the Prime Minister was received by our PM, who has gone to the airport had gone to the airport only for President Obama and the Crown Prince of UAE before that. And so, the impact it created in the country is immeasurable. And here's a country that, it takes a lot of, gives a lot of importance to self-respect and how others, treat them.
Even in Modi 3.0 or BJP 3.0 or NDA 3.0, whatever anybody wants to call it, the first international visit, head of state coming in, has been Sheikh Hasina. Her
That's
visit.
right. I mean, she was not only invited for the inauguration of Prime Minister Modi's government, but also for, the first state visit that Prime Minister Modi hosted under his third term in office. And her first state visit outside since she became assumed a fourth term in office
Yes.
in January this year. So from that perspective, I think it did, and I wrote about it also. I wrote an article in the Economic Times in which I said that it basically symbolizes the primacy that Bangladesh attaches to its relations with India and vice versa. And I think that is very important that the two neighboring countries can collaborate to that extent. Her second visit was to China. And of course, I would also think that she definitely made that visit to India to say that my first visit has to be to India before I go to China. It would send all the wrong signals if it first
Goes to China.
state visit, first official visit were to China.
That's incredibly sensitive about bilateral ties and about her emotional ties with the country too,
Exactly.
right, with India.
Exactly. And so, a perceived sense of, not according her the respect that she deserved as a head of state or a head of government of, a partner country, I think was one of the reasons that her visit was cut short and she got back. And then she made the announcement that she would prefer to give the T-Star deal to India. This entire project involving management of the T-Star and development in that area. Now, again, we can only go by reports. I mean, we're not talking about any inside information, but various accounts indicate that there was a clear sense that India is our most important partner, and as they say, China is our development developmental partner.
Sure.
And I don't
Which
know.
should be fine for India, right? That Bangladesh is our trusted ally, or Bangladesh sees us as its trusted ally, but for trade purposes does with China. That should be a more mature way of a bigger neighbor looking at Bangladesh or looking at its neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, we don't take any issue with that. But the fact of the matter is that we have also been a very important development partner. I mean, Bangladesh
Sure.
accounts for the largest chunk of our development partnership budget.
Yeah.
We have $10 billion in concessional financing extended to Bangladesh for various projects for Bangladesh's development, grants in aid in other areas. And of course, I think trade has really, I would say, gone significantly higher in the last 10 years. Today, Bangladesh is our fifth largest trading partner in the world. And there was a time, 10, 15 years earlier when Bangladesh wasn't even on the radar screen in terms of trade. So the two countries have made huge progress in trade, in connectivity, in forging a developmental partnership that allows our two countries to gain immensely on a mutual level.
Unrest which is happening currently in Bangladesh, that did impact on trade to some extent, in the sense that for a couple of days the port was closed, transport vehicles couldn't move, the road transport vehicles couldn't move. But there's also the other element of Indians in Bangladesh. We had about, I think the last count was 4,500 of them who came across. But then there's also this thing of Mamata Banerjee, Chief Minister of West Bengal, saying that if anybody comes, if refugees come across, then our doors are open, we owe it to them. The linkage between West Bengal and Bangladesh. And then there are source-based reports which say that Bangladesh didn't quite like what Mamata Banerjee had to say, and that Indian officials said that there is no locus standi for a chief minister to say anything. It's a national issue. It's the central government which takes a stand. As a former ambassador and as a former foreign secretary, how do you see all this playing out?
Well, I mean, the Constitution is very clear about allocation of powers to the center and the state and the states, and of course concurrent powers in certain cases. Foreign policy is one area where there is no ambiguity. It's purely with the center. So for a state that is so sensitive to its own rights under the Constitution, whether it is for water, whether it is for agriculture, law and order, and so on and so forth, to dabble in what is a sensitive international issue is unusual. And having said that, I mean, of course, I think we have to see where the context of that statement by Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. It could have been simply saying that, look, I mean, we will be, if people come across, we'll receive them and we will take care, etc. But certainly the way it has come out has riled the Bangladeshis and has been, also a sort of, as a result, the MEA has had to make a statement on that. So I think in some senses it not only may have been out of context, but also, it's really the domain of the center to make any statements on any issues, especially those that involve the internal affairs of other countries and our neighbors.
With West Bengal, that's always been an issue, even when it came to river water sharing. If you remember when Dr. Manmohan Singh's government, it was the Vajpayee government also, at every point of time, Mamata Banerjee as Chief Minister said that you cannot have agreements on issues which impact the people of the state without consulting us. Now, this is something Tripura also had said it, and all the states which are around Bangladesh say that, Indian states say that consult us too. So I get it that it's a central issue, but when it impacts on the state, is it wrong? Just, I mean, on a policy level, I'm asking you.
No, I think consultations with states on any external matters that impinge on those states is absolutely vital. And nobody understands
Like
it better.
the enclaves which were shared,
That's
all
right,
those.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody understands this better than Prime Minister Modi, because he himself has been
Gujarat,
Chief Minister of a
yeah.
state. So cooperative federalism is the name of the game. And the MEA even has a states division, whose sole responsibility is to interact with states.
Okay.
And so any important issue that involves, say, Nepal and impinges on Bihar, UP, etc., and Uttarakhand, those states are consulted. Important aspects that involve, say, Bangladesh, you will consult West Bengal, Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram. It's natural. If you have something to do with Sri Lanka, you'll consult
Okay,
Tamil Nadu.
Tamil Nadu. Okay.
So this has been more pronounced in the last decade or so because, as I said, the policy has been to consult states.
Okay.
So I don't think there are too many instances where states are not consulted. And where the views of states are taken into account. But at the end of the day, decisions after consultations have to be taken by the center. You can't have states taking decisions on matters that relate to foreign policy. And certainly consultation is not the same as putting your views forward on issues that concern other states.
But it's an 856 kilometer border. Not all of it is fenced.
With West Bengal.
Bangladesh with India.
4,000 plus kilometers.
4,000, okay.
Yeah.
So 856 is with Bangladesh, right?
With West Bengal.
West
possibly.
Bengal and Bangladesh. And I think there's still, only 90% is fenced between West Bengal and Bangladesh. So there's still that fear that that we could have refugees coming in into West Bengal. Could that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have fencing, but the topography is difficult. There are rivers, there are hills, undulating terrain. So it's not all, I mean, there are a lot of gaps in the fencing. And you can certainly have people, movement of people on either side. That is one of the reasons why you have border guarding forces, etc.
But do you think that the situation has become that bad that there will be people who will be coming in as refugees? No.
Not at all. Not at all.
Right?
I think even out of the 15,000, Indian citizens who are in Bangladesh, according to the MEA's statement, only a certain number have come across, and that's mainly students. But most of the others were expatriates, professionals working in Bangladeshi companies, doing business, etc., have chosen to stay there. So there's been no threat to foreigners so far.
Okay.
The situation has not reached that level.
Okay.
And so I think, it's premature to talk about welcoming people, etc.
Before I move to Nepal and conclude on Bangladesh, one question I have is that do you think Sheikh Hasina will emerge out of this as strong as she was before, or do you think that this is going to tarnish her her fourth term?
She is an experienced and astute politician. She also has very strong human qualities. And she's come out of so many challenges and so many very difficult situations, right from, having seen her entire family wiped out to trying to create a political base when there were military dictatorships in power. Has seen opposition governments give a very, very difficult time, including almost losing her life in the grenade attack. She's always emerged out of all of this. And if anyone knows the pulse of the people of Bangladesh, it is Sheikh Hasina. And I have no doubt that she has the political wisdom and sagacity to emerge out of this conflict in a way that is in the best interests of her own government and the people of Bangladesh. So I think, my own sense is that, she will show the necessary, outreach and, take the steps necessary that will allow the situation to, be completely restored back to normalcy. No doubt about that.
So before we turn to Nepal, here's a short primer for our viewers and listeners about the situation in Nepal. Nepal has been politically unstable since it abolished its 239-year-old monarchy in 2008. The country has seen 5 prime ministers in the last 5 years. Communist politician K.P. Sharma Oli was sworn in as prime minister, promising political stability. During his first term in 2015-2016, Oli brought Nepal closer to China by signing a transit agreement with Beijing. That agreement ended India's monopoly over landlocked Nepal's foreign trade. Nepal shares borders with 5 Indian states: Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Sikkim and Bihar. This makes Nepal an important point of cultural and economic exchange. Traditionally, almost all prime ministers have chosen India as their first destination to travel abroad. But this time it looks like PM Oli might skip India or for that matter even China. His first trip abroad might be to Thailand for the BIMSTEC meet in September, where he might have a one-on-one with Prime Minister Modi. Right, Ambassador, let's turn to Nepal from the fourth term of Sheikh Hasina to the fourth term of KP Sharma Oli. People are calling it oligarchy in Nepal. Why is it that Nepal is unable to have a stable government? Why this successive coalition governments toppling, changing? Why does that happen? Why is there no stable governance there?
Well, in 2008, when the Maoist agitation ultimately culminated in the removal of monarchy, abolition of monarchy, and the introduction of multi-party government or governance, you've had 21 different governments in power. So in a matter of 16 years, you've had 14 governments in
14.
power. And as a result, I think you've almost had one government every year. So political instability is rife, and you're right in saying that. Governments change on a whim and, literally on a dime, as they say. But the fact of the matter is, I think it is essentially, one, of course, you can attribute it to the Constitution, because the Constitution was framed in a manner that I think was consultative, but at the same time, I think you had to compromise on the interests of, very, very differing ideologies, ranging from, the views of the Maoists on that